Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down the top 10 greatest final albums in metal history. All entries here on this list are comprised of bands that we, as far as we know at least, are done making studio albums. So, that being said, let's get started here with number 10. I'm going to kick things off with Master of the Moon from Ronnie James Dio from 2004, and Dio will appear again on this list a little bit later on, but this was the final time that Dio would release a solo record during his lifetime, Master of the Moon here, the follow-up to 2002's Killing the Dragon, and a very solid album here. You know, some of Dio's 21st century works tend to be a bit underrated, but this is a fine album here and a great way to go out for Dio, with some standout tracks being One More for the Road, the title track Master of the Moon, Shivers, The Man Who Would Be King, Living the Lie, I Am, and In Dreams to close things out. So, really solid stuff on this album, in my opinion. I think it's a fine record, and like I said, a very fitting last solo record for Ronnie James Dio. So, coming in at number 10 here, I'm going to go with 2004's Master of the Moon, the final Ronnie James Dio solo album. Next, at number 9, I'm going to go with The Serpent and the Spear by the extreme metal band Agalloch, released in 2014. This is their final studio album as they would disband in 2016, but they go out here with an incredible record, and in my opinion, it's the best that they've sounded in the studio from a production standpoint. Produced by the band and Billy Anderson, the production is crisp and I think superb. Right, great sounding album here. The band sound incredible, and when it comes to some standout tracks on here for me, I gotta go with Birth and Death of the Pillars of Creation. Great 10-minute epic, excellent way to open up the record. Some other standouts include Dark Matter Gods and Plateau of the Ages. Clocking in at nearly an hour, this album is a bombardment of some of the heaviest and best material in the Agalloch catalog, in my opinion. Great work here for their final record, released in 2014. I gotta go with The Serpent and the Spear by the extreme metal band Agalloch from 2014, my number 9 here on the list. Following that up here with my number 8, I'm going to go with Bad Magic by Motorhead. Released in 2015, this album came out just 4 months before Lemmy would die, but even in bad health here, he releases an incredible album fronting Motorhead, with some great material on this album, including Victory or Die, Thunder and Lightning, Firestorm Hotel, Electricity, Evil Eye, Teach Them How to Bleed, and then, of course, you have Sympathy for the Devil, the great Rolling Stones cover on here. Seems like that song has been covered by just about every band, but a great album here, a great way for Lemmy to go out, and this would be the 22nd and final album in the Motorhead catalog. They released a lot of records here, but this would be the last one released in the lifetime of Lemmy Kilmister, who, like I said, would die just 4 months after the release of this record. Coming in at number 7 here on the list, I'm going to go with Celtic Frost and their final studio album, released in 2006, Monotheist. You know, Celtic Frost, definitely one of the most important extreme metal bands of all time here, so a fantastic final record for them, and what I really enjoy about this album is the incredible range shown on this album. You know, typically the Celtic Frost sound combines doom metal as well as thrash metal, but on this record you get to hear the band experimenting with different types of metal subgenres, such as symphonic metal and gothic metal as well, in addition to doom and thrash, so really interesting there. Love the range here by the band, and all in all, it's an incredible album that showcases the best of Celtic Frost, in my opinion, despite them experimenting a little bit more on this album here. Great way for them to go out. Like I said, Celtic Frost, one of the most important extreme metal bands of all time, so a fantastic record for them, released in 2006, the 5th and final studio album by Celtic Frost here, my number 7 on the list. For number 6, how about The Devil You Know by Heaven and Hell here from 2009, and, you know, I wanted to include this here in the video because I had already covered the final solo album by Ronnie James Dio here, but this would be the last time that Dio would return to the studio to record new music for The Devil You Know by Heaven and Hell in 2009, and I'll cover more Sabbath a little bit later in this list, and obviously we know that Heaven and Hell is just Black Sabbath, the Mob Rules lineup of Black Sabbath under a different name for legal reasons maybe, I'm not really sure, but the band here reuniting the Mob Rules lineup with this great record, the final time Dio would record new music in the studio, and the outcome, obviously fantastic. You know, it's the Mob Rules lineup of Black Sabbath. What do you expect? Great tracks on here like Adam and Evil, Fear, Bible Black, Double the Pain, Turn of the Screw, Neverwhere, Breaking Into Heaven as well. Follow the Tears to the Killer Riff. Just an incredible album here. Of course, you have Dio, who sounds fantastic despite battling stomach cancer at this point. Tony Iommi's got some great riffs on here. Vinny Appice on the drums. They say nobody hits the drums harder. And, of course, Geezer Butler with those awesome bass lines as well. It's all the ingredients you need here to create a classic Sabbath record. And even though they didn't release this album under the Sabbath banner, it's still a great album here. And I do kind of consider it to be Black Sabbath, just under a different name. But the point is, I wanted to include it here on this list because it's the final time Dio would record new music in the studio. So coming in at number 6 from 2009, I'm going to go with The Devil You Know here by Heaven and Hell. Breaking into the top 5 now, I'm going to go with Dead Again by Typo Negative, released in 2007. This would be the first time since 2003 that the band released new music here in the form of a studio album, and it would be the final time they would release new music in a studio album because Peter Steele would pass away in 2010. But an incredible record here. I think Peter Steele still sounds fantastic on this record. Got some really interesting lyrics on here as well, and when it comes to some standout tracks, I got to go with the title track, Prophet of Doom, September Sun, Halloween in Heaven, the Dimebag Darrell tribute, which is just a great track, Some Stupid Tomorrow, and Hail and Farewell to Britain. So an incredible album here from beginning to end, in my opinion, and it really does check off all the boxes, in my opinion, for what a Typo Negative album should be and what I look for in a Typo record, right? A lot of great stuff on this record, and of course, it's classic Typo Negative from beginning to end. So coming in at number 5 here, I'm going to go with the final Typo Negative studio album released in 2007, Dead Again. Well, I had mentioned there would be another Black Sabbath entry here on this list, so that being said, coming in at number 4, I'm going to go with 13 by Black Sabbath here, the final Sabbath studio record and the first since 1979's Never Say Die to feature Ozzy Osbourne on lead vocals, and I really enjoy this album. I know it gets a lot of hate from a lot of Sabbath fans who say it's formulaic, it's very paint-by-numbers Sabbath, very predictable, but that's almost what I enjoy about this record. The way I see it, it's a very fitting tribute here to the classic Black Sabbath sound. Great way to pay tribute to Sabbath through new material. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think it would shine a little bit of light on this record for a lot of people. And tracks on here that I enjoy include End of the Beginning, God is Dead, Loner, Zeitgeist, Age of Reason, Live Forever, Dear Father as well. So some great tracks on here, some really underrated Sabbath material, and some great riffs by Tony Iommi as well. Ozzy sounds great on lead vocals too. So all around, a great record here. The only disappointment is that Bill Ward was not on the drums because Sharon didn't want to pay him as much, which is just a shame, but I guess it is what it is all these years later. But still, it would have been better had Bill Ward performed on this record. Nonetheless, coming in at number 4, I'm going to go with 13 by Black Sabbath, their final studio album from 2013. Top 3 now, and for my number 3, I'm going to go with Repentless by Slayer from 2015. The only Slayer record not to feature Jeff Hanneman on guitar, replaced by Gary Holt. Of course, Jeff Hanneman would pass away in 2013, but Gary Holt, fantastic guitarist from Exodus, who does a killer job here on this record, and it's also the first Slayer record since God Hates Us All to feature Paul Bostaph on the drums, replacing Dave Lombardo. He does a great job here as well. Excellent drummer is Paul Bostaph, and this album is killer. Just really heavy, thrashy album here by Slayer that does a great job of encapsulating the band's discography and paying tribute to their classic sound here on their final record with some killer standout tracks that includes Repentless, Take Control, Vices, Cast the First Stone, When the Stillness Comes, Piano Wire, Atrocity Vendor as well. So really heavy tracks on here, in my opinion. It's a great thrashy album and a great send-off for Slayer. Coming in at number 3 here, kicking us off in the top 3, I'm going to go with Repentless from 2015. For my number 2, I'm going to go with a really underrated record from the Pantera catalog, that is Reinventing The Steel from 2000. The final record released by Pantera here, and this is an album that tends to be very overlooked by a lot of people, and overhated as well. It's always towards the bottom of people's lists when they're ranking Pantera studio albums, but I really love this album. It's a really consistent, heavy record by the band, and their albums just got progressively heavier as their discography matured, and they really came into their sound. But this is an incredible album, in my opinion, with some awesome underrated tracks that include Hellbound, You've Gotta Belong to It, Revolution Is My Name, Death Rattle, We'll Grind That Axe for a Long Time, It Makes Them Disappear, and then the insanely heavy I'll Cast a Shadow to close things out. Following this record, the band would disband a couple years later, and then Dimebag Darrell would be assassinated in 2004, so that pretty much stopped any possibility of the band ever releasing new music again. But we now know they're going to be reuniting for a tour in 2023, but I do hope that this stays the final Pantera record. I would hate for the band to get back together here under the Pantera name and release new music without the Abbott brothers. That just doesn't seem right, and I shared my thoughts on the Pantera reunion tour, so I won't get too much into it, but let's just hope this stays the final Pantera album here from 2000. I'm going to go with the excellent Reinventing the Steel, coming in at number 2 here on my list. Just a quick note here, I am planning on doing a sequel to this video at some point, counting down the best rock final albums, but today, just focusing on metal, so that's the list where you'd find bands like Van Halen, Rush, David Bowie, The Doors, The Beatles, etc. But today, focusing only on metal final albums. So that said, coming in at number 1 here, I'm going to go with The Sound of Perseverance by Death from 1998. The final studio album by Death, unfortunately due to Chuck Schuldin's passing in 2001, but an incredible record here, a great album for the band to leave off with with some fantastic tracks on here, such as Scavenger of Human Sorrow, Bite the Pain, Spirit Crusher, Flesh and the Power It Holds, Voice of the Soul, an incredible instrumental. Also, you have Painkiller, Killer Judas Priest cover here. Chuck Schuldiner sounds fantastic. Some of the best vocals he ever performed, in my opinion, and this album is just loaded from beginning to end with incredible death metal essentials on here. Definitely a defining death metal album, and chance for the band to show their prowess in a genre that they helped to pioneer, that being progressive death metal. So awesome stuff here from beginning to end. Chuck Schuldiner sounds incredible on this record, and unfortunately, it'd be the last time he would record new music with death before his passing in 2001. But a great record here, and an album that I very badly need to pick up the next time I go to a record store. So coming in at number 1 here on the list, I'm going to go with The Sound of Perseverance by Death from 1998. So that wraps up this list, counting down the top 10 best final albums in metal history, which should be visible right over here. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, and help me reach my goal of 700 subs here on YouTube. Turn on the bell for notifications to be notified of a new upload, and leave it down in the comments below. What are some of your favorite final albums in metal history? I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions, so let me know all that good stuff down in the comments below. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.